Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vaga Maradian covering DSEI, one of the world's truly great trade shows here at the Excel Center in London. It's a trade show as well as an incredible conference that includes military leaders from around the world. Our coverage here is sponsored by L3 Harris, Leonardo DRS, and we're partnered with Clarion Events in covering this great DSEI event. Clarion, of course, putting on a number of defense events around the world, flagship events, and we're also working with the UK Department of International Trade's Defense and Security Organization to bring you the very best in British defense, and it's our honor to be talking to Air Vice Marshal Rochelle, the Capabilities Chief for the Royal Air Force, the father of all air forces around the world, and one of Britain's truly distinguished airmen and air power thinkers. Sir, I want to start with the threat environment we find ourselves in. You know, in conversation after conversation, including from the first panel when Air Marshal Knighton. Let me do that again. Completely drew a vacuum. When we heard this morning from Air Marshal Rick Knighton, was talking to us about the threat environment that we're in right now. Talk to us, because you and I were just talking and you were making it clear that it's actually moving far faster than even people can wrap their minds around. Talk to us about the rate of change, the pace of change in the threats, not just from a European perspective, from a global air power perspective, as we get our heads wrapped around the way to best address that.
Yeah, sure. I think, well, it's a great question. I think Air Marshal Rich Knighton hit it right nail on the head this morning. The pace of change is going so fast. We are struggling without a doubt to keep up. That's forcing us to change our processes. You know, we've talked a little bit in the past about our Rapid Capability Office. You know, they reside in the US. We've done similar ones. Look at you.
Yeah, just look at me the whole time.
Right,
completely ignore the camera.
Okay. We've talked about that in the past, Rapid Capabilities Office, about how they help us. But you know, the threat axis has moved. You know, if you look at the eastern flank of NATO today and the northern flank, they all feel that the threat is palpable, that it's on their doorstep. There's no indications and warnings for them should something go wrong. Crimea and Ukraine was a classic example of that. So for them, they are really trying to force change and be innovative. Some of them are very innovative nations. There is a danger that slightly further back as you come across Europe, we think we've got time to adjust. Reality is we haven't got time to adjust. We have to accelerate our processes. Air Marshal Rich Knighton spoke about bureaucracies tend to stifle that innovation, you know, can do it at birth. You know, we have to go against all of our inner instincts that exist there today in our normal establishments and reverse that trend. We've got to go for it. So that's the reason why we developed our Rapid Capability Office in the UK, a facsimile of the United States Air Force, RCO, mentored by their team, by Waldo out in the States, who's helped us through that process. And we know it's already making a difference. We've had some very successful small projects within that. And Team Tempest, our combat air initiative, is part of that program as we move forward. Again, that is to address that cost curve. It's to address that capability and that cost curve, but it's also to make sure that the industry that supports the aircraft today, the Typhoons, the current capability, the F-35s, that they continue to innovate as well, because that is the fielded forces that we have, and they need to keep step with that change. So very important priority for me, F-35 follow-on, its development, it moving forward to make sure that that actually always stays at the cutting edge of the combat area.
As you think about, right, Tempest is the program that's leading into the future combat air capability. Sweden, obviously, a partner on that program now. You're looking for more partners. Talk to us a little bit, though, about the capabilities that you want to get out of that jet, because there are many folks who would say that you haven't fully unlocked what the F-35 can do at this point, with given that you know, the airplane is still very early in its operational cycle, just now going into service. As you look downstream for what this future combat air system is going to look like for the United Kingdom, what are the sort of foundational attributes? Is it greater range? Is it greater payload? Is it a lower signature? What are the elements that you're blending together as you shape what this program is truly going to be through the Tempest demonstration program?
So that's a really interesting question. Most people who are trying to map something in 20 years, 30 years time would make sure that you just describe some sort of vision or some form of outcome, and that you don't over-specify outcomes at this stage, as in narrow key user requirements. So people keep asking us, you know, what payload are you talking about, what range you're talking about. Not interested in that conversation at the moment. What I care more about are two things. the philosophy, what is our thinking about what it is that we're trying to achieve, and therefore the foundational architecture that is required in the system. So what I can tell you that we are absolutely spot on about is it has to be an open system architecture at birth, that therefore follows the same sort of process to your phone with the applications add-on. It must adapt at the speed of change. So that has to be modular systems, open architectures. They are the core part of the program. You then have to have the philosophy that allows you to make sure that you can keep that in existence and resist every temptation in your inner instincts to narrow down to a specification. But you wouldn't be surprised to know that we are obviously talking about certain characteristics of LO, of RCS, of payload and range, but we don't like to talk about them at the moment because as soon as we do talk about them, people will narrow in on those and go, hang on a moment, this means you're bringing something in that's going to be at this part of the curve, they will be doing this, we'll be doing that. We're not into that space. What I also care about is the cost curve. You know, we all have seen those classic RAND diagrams that talks about the cost of complex platforms and increasingly how they have continued to grow. You know, the F-35 program is doing great and starting to challenge that cost curve now, and you know, when 2,500 units are popped out, that will help us bring that cost curve down, which is brilliant, but the same applies for the future capabilities. How do you use modern manufacturing techniques that are available today to allow us to challenge that cost curve? You know, the previous chief, argued for it, and I completely support him on it. You can have complex platforms at an affordable price, which will allow you to get back to the mass dimension that you actually need. So those are the driving factors that are focusing our work right now.
And remember having those conversations with Sir Stephen about, how to sort of get to that better place. Your job is also capabilities integration and capabilities thinking across the entire piece to deliver those kind of air effects. And that also includes from a logistics and sustainment standpoint as well, how to think about that, given that adversaries are going to have capabilities to hold at risk air bases, right? Something we didn't have to think about for a long time. You entered the Air Force, I think, in '89, if memory serves correctly.
'86 I joined, but a good one. '89 I hit the front line, yeah.
You hit the front line and got your Distinguished Flying Cross in Granby in the first Gulf War. Talk to us a little bit about the integrated approach that you're taking and the thinking that you're putting into this, given that the logistical piece will be something that'll be held at risk. You'll be in an information domain that will be held at greater risk. Francis, my friend Francis Tusa and I were talking, and one of the criticisms Francis was making was, as you go into these wholly integrated networks, do you actually introduce vulnerability as opposed to taking it out of the picture? Talk to us about sort of the integrated approach that you're taking to make sure that you get each one of these pieces right, given that you do need that full picture going from ISR all the way down to the precision strike at range that you need to think about in the sustainment that goes along with it.
Sure, again, great points, great questions. So it's fundamental. Command and control, multi-domain operations, you've perhaps heard some of that today already. They are actually central to this. So I do firmly believe that every one of my platforms, including A400 or MRTTs or Voyager aircraft, have to be part of that node or system. Because the way you fight that resilience issue in terms of somebody's attacking you is to have multiple pathways of the information getting through to the shooter that is requiring that information, etc. That also includes space. So I'm hot on the idea that we need to be making sure that we can push the information of an F-35 in the middle of a SuperMes and an A2AD environment. It's going to be this great ISR platform. That information has got to land with the rest of the warfighting community as soon as it has been captured by the F-35 and pushed into the system. So how do we push that through a rivet joint? How do we push that via space? Are we going to use lasercom capabilities? Are we going to drop that into our command and control bunker? How does that instantaneously change our picture for all the forces that are about to move out on their next target set? So I think the answer to the question is yes, you are always at threat, but you can fight your way through. So if one of your computer systems is at threat, if you've got 10 computer systems and they're in different networks and there are different shut-off processes, you can control it. So it's not new. We've been doing that for a while. You're building resilience now into your cyber capability, into your information capability, as much as in the old days we used to build resilience into our air bases by having hardened aircraft shelters, dispersion, concealment. Same philosophy, you've just got to apply it to all the other aspects of the domain.
We've heard from folks say, I think First Sea Lord talked a little bit about this, that it's like the Cold War, but it's very different from the Cold War in some respects. When it comes to new concepts of operations, as you work, as the technology changes, as you try to get more agile, you may find completely radical ways of doing the things that you were doing. Where do you see the greatest opportunity to do step game change stuff at the end of the day that allows you to deliver those effects? As we've heard, maybe the RAF at some point goes to 10,000 people who run a whole series of highly automated systems around the world. I think that's a little bit on the ambitious side. I think you still need bodies. I think if I asked the CAS right now, he'd say he needs a couple of more bodies at the end of the day on end strength, just like everybody does. But where do you see those opportunities for potential greatest game change? At a time when so much is changing around us from fundamental technology we're dealing with.
Yeah, so, as always, some of those things that we play around with, we don't talk about. So
I strangely thought you might say that.
So they tend to be the areas that we're seeing the greatest opportunities. But we've previously spoken about the Bright Cloud capability in the UK, expendable active decoy. We know that's a step change capability. We've been playing around with this swarm capability that we announced with the previous Secretary of State in terms of that. The team have impressed me so far. We were looking at how that was going forward. Well, it's going forward far better than I had possibly imagined. And, when giving the guys and girls challenges, you get amazing things out of them. And I think again, it's a piece that Rich Knighton spoke today, this innovation piece is, when you unlock them, when you tell them it's free to play in the sandpit and get on with it, that's where we're seeing the best bits and pieces occur. So our small satellite capability, our Carbonite 2 that we launched into space, we further announced on a growing part of that capability through Project Artemis at RIAT this year. That's moving things forward, and like these things that we're seeing out in the commercial world, where a network of like-minded individuals that are prepared to collaborate and work together, that's exactly what we've got on Artemis. This like-minded set of different industries, different partners, different agencies have all come together and gone, hey, it looks ambitious, maybe you're being over-ambitious, but let's give it a go. And that's where we're seeing the greatest difference.